Hello and good morning again. Thank you for joining me again today. This is our 68th in the series, and I think I did a few prior to starting to number these things. So as this COVID moves on, it's changing every day what's going on with this because it is a type of virus that mutates. And we talked about our mitochondria early on. It also mutated. So in China, this COVID allegedly emerged from a combination of bats and civets. Now, bats they feed on fruit. They also have blood glycoprotein type fueling. They're very twitch oriented. They're nocturnal. And to me, it makes sense that the actions of this virus is related to an animal that thrives on the things that the virus thrives on. The civets, on the other hand, are often nocturnal and very low oxygen. They burrow more echolocaic rather than photosynthetic, both of them, as is the virus. Vitamin D has been shown to help bolster the immune system. It's a type of hormone that is photo UV activated. Great. Guess what else is UV activated? Manganese in algae type. So we are oxygenated, UV activated through things like vitamin D and actions of manganese. So take manganese maybe. I've been taking it for months now, and it's good. 8 milligrams, not magnesium, manganese. It splits oxygen out of water to when mitochondria are in distress, and they are in distress in this disease, in this virus. So initially, the Wuhan, China folks were dying. It was just terribly toxic, many, many deaths. That's what created the panic and the I wish I knew the name of the doctor who passed away, but who was ignored and kind of hushed down. So the truth shall set us free, and covering up the truth could kill us. I saw a brilliant 1-hour presentation from Dr. Robert Stevens from Johns Hopkins yesterday. Very comprehensive, very eloquent and concise presentation of human health, precision health, individualized health to understand who we are, self-actualized health that I try to assist with music, oxygenation strategies, and the science that supports these health-based interventions or complements to our ability to evolve within a human lifespan. So it started in Wuhan, very toxic. It migrated and became a little less toxic. It mutated. It migrated to different and mutated. Now it's down in Texas now. And I saw the governor of one of the towns down there saying, we have a lot of people with diabetes here. We have a lot of obese people, and it is mushrooming out of our control very quickly. This COVID seems to be a glycosis-related problem. And the spike proteins are glycoproteins. It's a glucose-dependent virus. Unlike mitochondria that moved in on us millions of years ago, what I see is the ancestor of mitochondria, Gallionella, does the same thing, looks like our mitochondria, does the same thing our mitochondria does, and is just as dependent on oxygen. So mitochondria have their own DNA, very dependent on oxygen. And when they don't get oxygen, chronic progressive hypoxia. I have a thorough paper on LinkedIn about allostatic load that creates hypoxia that leads to all sorts of diseases. The 2019 Nobel Prize with Greg Semenza and company. Hypoxia causes all pathological diseases, internal type diseases. Why? Because our mitochondria are starved. They shut down, we shut down. They die, the cell dies. They signal, they control much of what goes on in our cell. They also are the primary target of the longer viral RNA, the five, I call it a 5-dimer. I think that's the name of it. I'm not a genetic specialist, but I'm slowly learning this. But the RNA is the leader RNA, and that goes to the mitochondria and reproduces in the mitochondria. The mitochondria produce things, these double membrane vesicles, without which neither of these, cut that out, no virus, cut that out, no reproduction. So it is the gateway to this virus reproducing. And when these mitochondria are weak and the system is flooded with glucose, party time. They are completely enabled. So we, to understand that and to work with that and to make decisions with that in mind is pivotal right now. To start everything and turn it back the way it was, hypoxic, polluted, rushed around, stressed, destroying the oxygen supply through the trees and such, eating all the time, opens a pathway for the COVID-19 to take us into our next stage of evolution, because it's coming. Just like mitochondria came. This is mitochondria. It merged into our world, our human biology. And here we are, bada bada bang, bada boom. We have a lot of stuff going for us. We have evolved beautifully with the help of mitochondria. So now mitochondria are stressed, under duress, mutating, concaving into themselves, and then COVID moves in and finishes them off and takes our cells with it. Okay, but it's mutating. As it mutates, less people are dying from it. We finally realized how to deal with the pulmonary aspects. It's not just a matter of pushing oxygen into the lungs where the virus incubates. It's a matter of getting more, keeping us engaging the mitochondria with more oxygen. Hyperbaric and forced oxygen is like pouring gasoline all over a car. The car's not going anywhere. The car's not, in fact, it's damaging it. And that's what they found with the ventilation, forced ventilation. So basically putting patients on their back when they can still breathe engages groups of muscles, which is a function. And where there's function, the mitochondria are involved in fortifying that function, building those networks, and people survive. People survive because they're actually the brain, the mitochondria are in the brain, very dependent on oxygen. The brain is connected to our body, which is in the environment. And as we use the body in the environment, just as we evolved millions of years into where we are now, this is where we've come. This is us. We've evolved. And then in the last 200 years, big 200, industry. And we have really changed our environment.
and enter COVID-19. It's low oxygen, it's glycolytic, it's happy hypoxic, it's obese. No moving around with those guys. I mean, you can be overweight and still get around, but if you're obese, you don't go to many places. You're incapacitated. You can't really move. Right? It's hard to move. Obese, etc. Older people have succumbed to the gravity. They are less active too. They have not use it or lose it. We know that. I'm dealing with that with my own mother now. And ageism. I study aging, brain, wealth, aging health and wealth. Use it or lose it. And as you get older, we have more and more systems and networks. If you've oxygenated, the mitochondria are strong and robust, and the networks are interconnected, and it's like planting seeds and fuel and watering them with water and oxygen. Okay, so and now the more and more people have COVID now. Fewer and fewer are dying from it, partly because they've changed their treatment modes, and partly because the virus has mutated. So it's much more contagious. I'll just move down here. Much more contagious, and far less fatal. There are less fatalities. Less fatalities. That's where we're kind of at. So what's next? When we looked at Gallionella transforming the world many millions of years ago, mitochondria, these ancestors are, metals based. It's kind of toxic for a naive or, a small organism that is not used to, is just used to diffusion. Oxygen diffusion comes into the cell. And it provides, that type of, mitochondria went into a cell or a group of cells, or Gallionella, it's a little kidney bean shaped, has its own DNA, and we have our own DNA that was working around. And when it's surrounded by water and gets sunlight, it can mutate into other cells and mutate. And like the virus, it mutated enough so that it's a permanent fixture in our cells. And we have a mitochondrial Eve, they call it. So when the sperm fertilizes the egg, the sperm does have mitochondria, and it goes into the egg, and the sperm's mitochondria dies, but the woman's mitochondria carries on the same lineage. So it mutated enough that it just stays and goes from generation to generation to generation. And my concern is that's what this virus is going to do. Either this one or the next one. And mitochondria had very likely had a similar journey. Fascinating. The comparisons between how mitochondria created a symbiotic relationship with humans during a highly oxygenated, environmentally rich foraging. Can you imagine how we were surviving hundreds of years ago? With the world teeming with life and insects and growth, and mitochondria enabled that. They fueled it. It's like taking a horse and buggy and putting a gas,
getting the gas tank on it and the motor. That's it. The motor, that's what makes it. So this COVID-19 is mutating, and it's mutating successfully. What do you mean successfully? Well, it's mutating in that it's more contagious, more and more contagious, and less and less, less and less deadly. That means more and more people get it and survive it. And some of them without even antibodies or, and so in the process, it's killing it. Unfortunately, it's killing off its main subjects, its main trial test subjects, those who are high in glucose, those who are low in oxygen, those who have weak mitochondria. Now, when mitochondria are weak, they get into weird shapes, and they get all weird. They're not mitochondria are healthy bean-shaped things that bring in oxygen and kick out nuclear level fuel for us. Bada bada boom. So we have industrialized. We are doing this all the time and getting bits and bits and pieces and selling this and screening that and filtering this and very surface level mental. And the brain is very oxygen greedy. So are the heart and lungs. So it's going at, it's dealing with the lungs, cluttering up the heart, fixing those. So it's mutating for its own survivability. So my biggest concern, and it's killed off people who are so in the process of mutating through these are elderly, 80 plus, happy hypoxics, and obese, right? And children are excluded from that because they have a whole different trajectory, embryogenesis to when the brain's finished. It is a hot hypoxic type, active, normal, healthy part, because they're cutting out 1 trillion cells we're born with, 1 trillion brain cells, neurons, through the environment, through parental influences, through quality of education, mentoring, choices, opportunities, environment. We boil that down to 1 billion. 1 billion cells, right? And that 1 billion is what we're left with to mature and age. And this process is also a kill off. It kills off. Now, young people who play the violin, for instance, they have a growth in the area of the brain. That's not killed off. All that activity with that left hand and the precision control of it, with keeping the precision control and fluency, and it starts to play itself. You look at a brain of someone who has played the violin and has showed up to that violin year after year and enjoying it and committed to it and not stressing about it, but enjoying it, enjoying every bow and sound that's created. That's an oxygenated process. That's planting something and fueling it. It helps to have a good instrument, helps to have good parenting, all that sort of stuff. And so that is, you see a brain area, their motor strip, where that left hand is, it bulges out. It's called the omega sign. This other, so it just it's literally growth in the motor strip. Other things too. So when a pianist plays, it's part of the brain that connects the
the hemispheres, the corpus callosum. And then there's a cerebellum that for playing the piano, right? Right? Mm-hmm. However you want to do the piano. Okay, so that's kind of a piano, right? 3 and 2 and 3. Perfectly designed for the hand, the piano. And this gets stronger, gets more intense. And that's from playing the piano. And then there are other skills that are connected with spatial modeling and mathematical skills and many other things that are transferable through the actual music itself. And the genius of Bach and the genius of Mozart and the genius of Scarlatti and Clementi and Handel and Haydn. Haydn, what a genius. Woo! I mean, you play a little bit of his music and that genius pops into your head at a mathematical level. It's brilliant. And that is those are oxygenated composers. Composers today are living in a stressful, competitive, dog-eat-dog, more challenging world. It's hard to, we have changed the environment and its oxygenation levels. So. Okay, so I was listening to Dr. Robert Stevens about vitamin D that is synthesized plus sunshine equals Coat CV19 survival. Yeah. So that means that this process, vitamin D, the active form of it, is definitely part of our oxygenated health. Right? And the mitochondria are definitely involved in all of this, and sunshine and this type of it protects the membrane of the cell, and it also oh gosh, what else does it do? Anyway, it gets the cell activated and protects the integrity of function. Great. And the integrity of function is fueled. I guess it's kind of like the oil in the car. You need oil. So, mitochondria provide the petrol. The vitamin D seems to enable the oil part of it. Sorry, excuse me. So there we have it. There's vitamin D is more and more recognized as a preventative, very much likely involved in the health of the cell. And so this virus, I guess where I was going is that at the end of the day, we may all have it, and some of us may end up not having it, like mitochondria back then, or having a lot less of it. And so to me, this is the dichotomy of science, nature, evolution, concepts that we just haven't discovered yet, that just as mitochondria moved in on us during an oxygenated trajectory, and here we have evolved. Mostly oxygen as a primary fuel. 5 minutes, we can live without it. Hydration as a secondary source of, we are what, 70, 80%, 70% water. We should be, are we? If you look at an Alzheimer's brain, it's all shriveled up like a dried mushroom. Fluid is very, very important. We can live, 5 days without it. And nature's not very nice to us when we run out of breath. We're like, we're very desperate for it. Very desperate for it. And so that's good. Nature's said breathe because mitochondria need it. We can live 5 days without water, and it's not so bad. We stop producing vasopressin. And so it's a very painless, seamless. If we run out of fuel, of water, it's not a horrible death, from my understanding. It's kind of a hospice escort. When people go on hospice, they cut off fluid. 5 days, and it's, evolution has given us a break. We run out of it. Now, glucose, on the other hand, we need a little bit of it, but not a lot of it. We can live for 5 weeks without it. Right? And due to farming, industrialization, living in plastic boxes, not having to breathe. So oxygen is a primary fuel, the primary fuel. It is the number one primary fuel. We have reversed these things. We are now eating at least every 5 hours. So we've changed 5 weeks to 5 hours. Right? Our hydration has kind of, we get a lot through food. That's good. But water is expensive. Clean water is a very rare commodity. Even the local drinking water is peppered with chlorine and chemicals and things that evolution did not design us. Millions of years of evolution has been reversed here. And chemicals, chem. And then we are hypoxic. We're stressed. We're driven. We're what about this? What about that? What about this? What about that? It's hard to let go of that stuff, but it's possible to let go of it. And that's what my Proxia series is about. So please join me on that. And we have the time, the space during this pandemic to understand that it's not hyperbaric. It's oxygen with function, with stabilize. We can stabilize our oxygen levels. We can do it manually. Mindful meditation, exercise, chilling out, lighting a scented candle, putting on olfactory does it. We talk about many different methods to do that, to compensate for what we've lost through our environment, which is I was at the beach up in Long Island last week, and wow, I didn't have to breathe. Everything was just, wow. I was doing it naturally because the environment was triggering it. So, but that's different. We have changed. We've changed in the last, not too many years. 200 years. Industrialization. Farming. Chemical. Dr. Stevens so eloquently showed how the top expensive drugs have very low success rates when you look at people. 1 out of 30 respond to the treatment. It hurts other people. There are all these crazy side effects. Whereas this paradigm, this is our friend. This is if we want to stay evolved and continue to produce Mozarts and all those folks, oxygenation is the goal. Oxygenation is the ticket. Oxygenation, hydration, pure water, a restored planet is the answer. Yeah. Okay, so my concern is that at the end we're going to have a small group of people who have gotten the oxygenation thing and found, somehow maintain oxygen levels
low glucose, etc. And there's a much greater population that's going to get COVID and mutate into a happy hypoxic future, right? Oxygenation processes are longer marathon level type processes. Happy hypoxic is a quick flash, twitch. Oh, that was great. Oh, that was great. Oh, cool. Oh, cool. 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 Whereas an oxygen is, oh, wow. Well, that's interesting. How does that connect to that one? And how can I find out more about this to make it, get the foundation of this knowledge, the foundation of learning to be a master musician, the foundation of having multiple interests and letting those interests find their own outlet through a self-actualization. This is self-actualization. Oxygen is self-actualization. The top of Maslow's pyramid. Yes, that is the goal. And going beyond that top of the pyramid, Maslow. Whereas down here, we have our needs taken care of, but we start to, low oxygenate when we get the job, and we start to low oxygenate when we go to school, and we have bad parents, so that's a low oxygen thing, and we don't quite make it. We kind of hang out and get a lot of quick, cheap fixes. That's how I see it. Whereas the oxygenated is building a pyramid of knowledge, of skills. It's a slow, it's a marathon type process, but you get there one breath at a time. All that matters is what you do on your next breath. And that is the takeaway from oxygenation, healthy mitochondria. That COVID does not stand a chance when the mitochondria with their own DNA are bolstered and ready for whatever comes in the cell. If we're starving them of oxygen and flooding the system with glucose, we're cutting them out of business. The shop is decrepit, dilapidated. Mitochondria are halfway there to closing shop anyway. You get a bunch of robbers coming in, which is what the COVID is, pillaging, breaking into our cells, stealing everything it needs to, squatting in the cell until it's destroyed, and it goes out and finds other cells. Bandits. COVID's bandits. I don't think we want that. And hypoxic, obese, lifetime of stress, allostatic load makes those mitochondria very vulnerable. It's like having a dilapidated old shop. You just kick in the door and, take what you want. And that's what's happening with our mitochondria and our cells. Okay, so thanks for listening. And that's the latest. Glycoprotein is in that. It's a very glucose-dependent virus. Mitochondria is a very oxygen-dependent bacteria. Yeah, there's a lot to think about here. Some big choices science has provided for us to understand and wake up. Thank you for listening. Breathe out. Keep breathing.